Charlie Munger once told a group of young investors something that sounds almost cruel until you understand it. He said, the first $100,000 is a bitch, but you gotta do it. I don't care what you have to do. If it means walking everywhere and not eating anything that wasn't purchased with a coupon, find a way to get your hands on $100,000. And then after that, you can ease off the gas a little bit. The first $100,000 is a bitch. Charlie Munger, a billionaire, said that. Not the first million, not the first 10 million. The first 100,000, the smallest number on the entire wealth building ladder, is the one he singled out as the hardest. And here's the thing that should stop you cold. He was right, and the data proves it. The overwhelming majority of Americans, by most estimates somewhere around 90 to 95%, never get there. They never cross $100,000 in invested assets. Not because they didn't earn enough over a lifetime to do it. Most of them earn multiples of it. They never cross it because something stops them again and again right before the milestone. So let me describe what this actually looks like and tell me if it's you. You started investing. Good for you. Genuinely, you're ahead of most people just for starting. You got to $5,000 and it felt amazing. You got to $20,000 and felt like you were finally getting somewhere. You're watching it grow. And then it stalls. Not because you stopped contributing exactly, but because life happened. The car, the move, the wedding. I'll just pause my contributions for a few months. You dipped into it once for an emergency. The market dropped 15% and you got scared and stopped. And somehow, years later, you're sitting at $30,000, $40,000, maybe $50,000. And you cannot, for the life of you, seem to break past it toward that six-figure number. You are not lazy. You are not bad with money. You have run face first into the single most documented, most predictable wall in all of personal finance. And almost nobody warns you it's coming. Today, I'm going to show you exactly why the first $100,000 stops 95% of people, the specific psychological and structural barriers that create the wall, and precisely how to be in the 5% who break through it. My name is Slime Johnson. This is Slime's Wealth Academy. Let's go. If you're someone who started investing, felt the momentum, and then watched it stall out somewhere in the tens of thousands, wondering why six figures feels like it's behind a wall you can't climb, make sure you hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it helps you out. Because today we're taking apart the most important and least understood milestone in wealth building. Not the first million, everyone talks about that. The first $100,000, the one that actually filters the builders from everyone else. No hype, no doom. Just the math of why the wall exists and the exact moves that get you over it. So stay with me. Part 1, the history lesson. Why the first dollar is the loneliest. To understand why $100,000 is the wall, you have to understand a piece of math that's been known for almost 400 years and why it's emotionally brutal in the early years in a way nobody prepares you for. Let me take you back to 1494. A Franciscan friar named Luca Pacioli, the man often called the father of accounting, publishes a book that includes something merchants had been circling for centuries: the mathematics of how money grows on money. Compounding, the idea that interest earns interest and that the growth isn't a straight line, it's a curve. But here's the part that took even brilliant minds a long time to fully feel, not just understand. There's a thing often attributed to the era of the great mathematicians like the Bernoulli and later Euler who formalized the constant we now call E, the mathematical heart of continuous compounding. The number E, roughly 2.718, describes the natural rhythm of exponential growth. And exponential growth has a cruel counterintuitive feature in its early stage. It barely moves at the start. Here's what most people don't realize about a compounding curve, and it's the entire reason the first $100,000 is so brutal. An exponential curve in its early portion is almost indistinguishable from a flat line. It looks like nothing is happening for a long time. All the drama, all the visible explosive growth that makes compounding famous, that happens later, on the right side of the curve. The left side where you start is agonizingly, demoralizingly slow. Let me make this concrete with real numbers because this is where it really lands. Say you're earning a 10% average annual return. At $1,000 invested, a 10% year earns you $100, $100. You can't even feel that. It's a tank of gas. At $10,000, a 10% year earns you $1,000. Nice, but it's not changing your life. Now look what happens at the milestone. At $100,000, that same 10% return earns you $10,000 a year without you lifting a finger. And at $200,000, it's $20,000 a year. At $500,000, it's $50,000 a year. Your money is now earning what many people earn at a full-time job. You see the pattern? The percentage never changed. It was always 10%. But 10% of a small number is emotionally meaningless, and 10% of a large number is life-changing. The entire game of the first $100,000 is grinding through the part of the curve where compounding is real but invisible, where you're doing all the work and the math is barely helping you yet. Here's the brutal historical truth. For the entire journey to your first $100,000, you are the engine. Your contributions, your savings rate, your discipline, that's what's driving almost all the growth. The compounding is along for the ride, but it's not pulling much weight yet. It's only after $100,000 that the relationship flips and the compounding starts contributing as much as you do, then more than you do, and eventually does virtually all the work while you coast. Munger understood this in his bones. When he said after that you can ease off the gas, he meant it literally. The first $100,000 is the stretch where the engine is entirely you, white knuckling up the flat part of a curve that hasn't started rewarding you yet. That's why it's a bitch. And that's why most people quit right in the middle of it. They're paying the full price of the climb without yet seeing the view. Now let's look at the specific barriers that make them quit. On to the data, the four walls that stop the 95% okay. So the curve is flat and demoralizing early. That alone would be hard enough. But there are four specific barriers, two psychological, two structural, that stack on top of that flat curve and stop the overwhelming majority of people cold. So let's name all four. Wall 1, the contribution dominance problem and why early progress feels hopeless. Here's a number that breaks people's brains. In the early years, your own contributions make up the vast majority of your account's growth, not the market. Let me show you. Say you invest $500 a month and earn 10%. In year one, you contribute $6,000 and your investment gains are maybe $300. So your contributions are 95% of your growth and the market is basically a rounding error. You're doing essentially all the work. This creates a devastating psychological effect. It feels exactly like a savings account. You put money in, the number goes up by roughly what you put in, and the investing part seems to be doing nothing. So people conclude reasonably but incorrectly that investing isn't working and they lose motivation. They don't understand that they're simply in the contribution dominant phase where the engine is supposed to be them. They quit a process that was working perfectly because it didn't feel like it was working. Wall 2, lifestyle creep intercepts every race. We've covered this in detail, so I'll be quick, but it's a critical wall. As people earn more over their 20s and 30s, the money that should have accelerated their investing, the raises, the bonuses, gets absorbed by lifestyle inflation instead. Expenses rise to meet income. So even as income climbs, the investment contribution stays flat or barely moves. The fuel that was supposed to power them through the flat part of the curve gets diverted into a nicer apartment and a car payment. They never increase the contribution, so they're trying to climb the hardest part of the curve on the smallest possible engine. Wall 3, the raid, using the investment account as an emergency fund. This one is the single most destructive and it's structural. Here's what happens to most people. They're building their investment account, but they do not have a separate, fully funded emergency fund. So the investment account silently becomes the emergency fund. The car breaks, the medical bill comes, the roof leaks, and the only money available is the investment account. So they raid it. And here's the part that makes this catastrophic, not just unfortunate. When you pull $10,000 out of your investments at year 5, you don't just lose 10,000. You lose every future dollar that $10,000 would have compounded into. Pulled out during the flat part of the curve, that 10,000 over 30 years at 10% was going to become roughly 174,000. The rate doesn't cost you 10,000 less. It costs you 174,000 less of future wealth. Most people rate their accounts multiple times in the first decade, each time resetting their progress and amputating an enormous chunk of their future. The account never gets a chance to escape the flat zone because it keeps getting dragged back down. Wall 4, panic selling in the first downturn. The fourth wall is the one the market itself builds. Sometime during your climb to $100,000, the market will drop. It always does. A 20%, 30%, even 40% correction is a normal recurring feature of investing, not a glitch. And here's the cruel timing. A big percentage drop early in your journey, combined with your large contributions relative to your balance, can make your account look genuinely scary. You see red. You see months of your hard contributions apparently vaporized. And loss aversion. The fact that we feel losses about twice as intensely as gains screams at you to make it stop. So people sell. They lock in the loss, move to cash, and then this is the killer. They miss the recovery because the market's best days cluster shockingly close to its worst days. Data on this is brutal. Missing just the 10 best days in the market over a multi-decade period can cut your final returns roughly in half. People who panic sell in the first downturn don't just take a loss. They permanently knock themselves off the curve and usually don't get back on until it's far too late. So stack all four of these on top of the flat, demoralizing early curve. The progress feels hopeless because contributions dominate, the raises get eaten before they can accelerate you. The account gets raided for emergencies because there's no buffer. And the first crash scares you out entirely. Four walls, and the overwhelming majority of people hit at least one of them, and the one they hit knocks them out before they ever reach six figures. Here's where it gets really interesting. Notice what all four walls have in common. Not one of them is about your income. Not one of them is about being smart enough or earning enough. Every single wall is either a psychological misread of the flat part of the curve or a structural failure to protect the account while it climbs. Which means, and this is the whole point, every single one of them is fixable. Part 3, the twist. Why $100,000 is the exact point it gets easier. Now here's the part that flips this entire video from discouraging to genuinely thrilling. Because there's a reason $100,000 specifically is the milestone and not 50,000 or 200,000. And once you understand it, the whole grind makes sense. $100,000 is approximately the point where your money starts pulling its own weight as hard as you do. Watch this. If you have $100,000 invested and the market returns its historical average of about 10%, your account earns roughly $10,000 in a year from growth alone. Now, what's a strong annual contribution for a regular person? Many dedicated investors are putting in something like $10,000 a year, and a lot of people less. So, right around $100,000, something almost magical happens. Your investment returns start matching and then exceeding what you personally contribute. That's the tipping point. That's the entire reason this number matters. Before $100,000, you are the engine and compounding is the passenger. After $100,000, compounding becomes an engine too, and then it becomes the bigger engine. The curve, which felt flat for years, finally starts to visibly bend upward. Let me show you the acceleration because it's genuinely stunning. Getting from zero to $100,000 at $10,000 a year of contributions plus growth takes most people somewhere around 7 to 9 years of disciplined investing. It's a grind. But then watch. Getting from $100,000 to $200,000 takes roughly 5 years. From 200,000 to 400,000, roughly 5 to 6 more years. And you didn't double your effort, the compounding did it. The first $100,000 might take you 8 years. The second 100 grand takes 5. The journey from 100,000 to $1,000 with the same contributions that got you to $100,000 can happen in under 20 years. And the vast majority of that million is growth, not your deposits. This is what Munger meant by ease off the gas. Once you're past 100,000, the compounding is finally strong enough to carry a meaningful part of the load. You did the hard part. You got the engine started. Now it runs increasingly on its own. Here's the cruel irony that ties this whole thing together. The exact point where investing starts to get dramatically easier and more rewarding is just past the wall, where 95% of people quit. They do the entire hard part. They grind through the flat curve. They pay the full psychological price. And then they quit or raid or panic sell right before the part where it all finally starts paying off. They walk away from the easy exponential back half of the journey after surviving the brutal linear front half. They quit at mile 20 of the marathon, not realizing the last 6 miles are downhill. The 5% aren't the people who climbed a different, easier mountain. They climbed the exact same brutal first $100,000 as everyone else. The only difference is they didn't get knocked off it by the four walls. That's it. That's the whole difference. Part 4, the present day, how to be in the 5% alright. This is the part that actually gets you across. 4 walls, 4 specific defenses, plus the mindset that holds it all together. Let me give you the exact playbook. Defense 1, reframe the flat curve, measure contributions, not returns. In the early years, the contribution dominance problem is psychological, so the fix is psychological. Stop judging your early progress by your investment returns, because in the early years, the returns are supposed to be small, and watching them will only demoralize you. Instead, measure the thing you actually control, your contribution streak. Did you invest this month? Yes? That's a win. You are the engine right now, so track the engine's output, not the passengers. Reframe it. You're not trying to get rich in years 1 through 5. You're trying to build the machine that gets you rich in years 10 through 20. The early years are construction, not payoff. Judge construction by whether you're building, not by whether it's paying yet. Defense 2. Automate and escalate the contribution so lifestyle creep can't intercept it. This kills wall 2. Automate your investment contribution so it leaves your account the day after payday before lifestyle can absorb it. And here's the key move most people miss. Escalate it automatically. Every time you get a raise, increase your contribution by chunk of the raise. Ideally before you ever adjust to the higher paycheck. We've talked about the 50% raise capture rule. Half your raise to your future, half to your present. This is how you make sure the rising income actually accelerates you through the flat part of the curve instead of getting eaten by a nicer lifestyle. Defense 3. Build a separate emergency fund first. This is the wall 3 killer and it's non-negotiable. This is the most important structural move in the entire video. The reason people rate their investments is that the investment account is the only money they have. So you remove that pressure entirely by building a separate dedicated emergency fund. 3 to 6 months of expenses in a high yield savings account kept completely apart from your investments. When the car breaks, you pay from the emergency fund and your investments never get touched. They stay on the curve. This single move, having a real emergency fund, is what allows the investment account to do the one thing it absolutely must do to reach $100,000. Be left alone to compound without interruption. And here's the timely part. High yield savings accounts are currently paying 4.5% to 5%, the best in over a decade. So your emergency fund, your investment's bodyguard, is earning a real return while it stands guard. Defense 4. Pre-decide your crash response, so panic can't make the decision for you. This kills wall 4. You cannot make a rational decision in the middle of a crash. Your loss-averse brain takes over. So you make the decision now in calm conditions and write it down. When the market drops, I will not sell. I will keep contributing. Downturns are when my contributions buy the most shares at the lowest prices. Because here's the reframe that changes everything during a crash. While you're in the accumulation phase, a market crash is not a disaster, it's a sale. Every dollar you invest during a downturn buys more shares at a discount, and those discounted shares become the biggest winners in the recovery. The investors who keep buying through the crash are the ones who pull away from everyone else. Pre-commit to it now, because you won't have the nerve to decide it in the moment. And the mindset that holds all four together, decouple your motivation from your returns and attach it to your behavior. The four walls all win by making you feel like it's not working, so you stop. The 5% win by understanding that in the first $100,000, working is defined as I kept investing and didn't get knocked off, not my balance is growing fast. If you simply do not get knocked off the curve, don't stop, don't raid, don't panic sell. The math guarantees you reach the milestone, and the milestone is where it gets easy. A note on the present environment, because this is a wealth channel. Right now, valuations are elevated. The Schiller Cape is around 34 to 35 versus a historical average near 17, which means forward returns over the next decade could be more modest than the 10% I used in the examples. So let me be honest about what that changes and what it doesn't. It might mean your early curve is even flatter than the historical case, which makes defense 1, measuring contributions instead of returns, even more important. But it does not change the fundamental structure. You are still the primary engine in the early years. The milestone is still where compounding takes over. And the four walls are still what knocks people out. A more modest return environment makes your savings rate matter more, not less, which is the one variable you fully control anyway. Part 5, the honest take. No hype, no doom, let me be straight with you, because that's the deal on this channel. First, the most important caveat. Getting to your first $100,000 is genuinely harder for some people than others, and that is not a character flaw. If you're earning a lower income, supporting a family, in a high cost of living city, or carrying significant debt, the math is real and it's harder. The gap between your income and your expenses is the fuel for this entire journey. And if that gap is thin through no fault of your own, the climb takes longer. I'm not going to stand here and pretend that discipline alone makes a structural income problem disappear. For some people, part of this equation genuinely has to be increasing income, not just optimizing what's there. The four walls are universal, but the size of the climb is not the same for everyone, and it's dishonest to pretend otherwise. Second, let me be clear about the numbers I used. The 95% never cross $100,000 figure is drawn from data on household investment assets. And exact figures vary depending on whether you count home equity, retirement accounts, and how you define investments. The precise percentage is less important than the underlying truth, which is rock solid. The overwhelming majority of people never build a six-figure investment portfolio, and it stops them well short of real financial security. Whether it's 90% or 95%, the wall is real and most people hit it. Third, on the timelines and the 10% returns. Those are historical averages and illustrations, not promises. Markets don't deliver a smooth 10% every year. They deliver wild swings that average out over long periods. Your actual journey will be lumpy, with terrifying drops and exhilarating runs. The smooth curves I drew are the long-term shape, not the year-to-year experience. Anyone who promises you a specific timeline to $100,000 is lying. What's reliable is the structure, not the schedule. And the broader truth, the future is uncertain. Nobody can promise you what the market does over your specific accumulation window, which is exactly why the strategy is what it is. Relentless contributions you control, a diversified low-cost portfolio so no single company can sink you, an emergency fund so you're never forced to sell at the bottom, and the discipline to stay on the curve through whatever comes. That approach doesn't depend on predicting the future. It's built to survive any future. That's the entire point. Here's what I need you to carry out of this video. The first $100,000 is a bitch. Munger was right, and the reason is mathematical, not personal. You're climbing the flat, invisible part of an exponential curve, where you are the entire engine and compounding hasn't started pulling its weight yet. You pay the full price of the climb without yet seeing the view. And that's exactly where four walls, contributions that feel like they're doing nothing, raises eaten by lifestyle, emergencies that drain the account, and crashes that scare you out knock 95% of people off the mountain before they reach the top. But here's the part that should change everything for you. The summit of that brutal climb, $100,000, is the exact spot where the mountain turns into a downhill. It's where your money starts earning as much as you contribute, then more, and the compounding finally takes over the work. The 95% quit at mile 20, never knowing the last miles were downhill. The 5% just refused to get knocked off. Same mountain, same brutal climb, they simply didn't stop, didn't trade, didn't panic. So be the 5%. Measure your contributions, not your returns, while the curve is flat. Automate and escalate so your raises actually accelerate you. Build a separate emergency fund so your investments never get raided. And decide right now, today, that you will not panic sell the next crash. You'll buy it. Do those four things, and you don't need to be smarter or richer than anyone. You just need to stay on the curve. Because the cruelest truth and the most hopeful truth are the same truth. Almost everyone quits right before it gets easy. Which means if you simply refuse to quit, the easy part, the exponential, life changing, compounding back half, is waiting for you on the other side of a wall that stops almost everyone but doesn't have to stop you. Get your hands on the first $100,000, whatever it takes. And then, like the man said, you can ease off the gas. If this video finally explained why your investing stalled out before six figures, hit that like button right now. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people stuck against the exact wall we just took apart. Subscribe to Slime's Wealth Academy if you're not already here. We break down the real mechanics of money every single week. No jargon, no gatekeeping, no shame. Drop a comment. Where are you on the climb to your first $100,000? Just started? Stalled out in the tens of thousands, already broke through? Tell me which of the four walls hit you hardest. I read every single one. And if you've got someone in your life who started investing with so much hope and then went quiet about it, send them this video. Showing them the wall is normal, predictable, and beatable might be the thing that gets them back on the curve. I'm Slime Johnson. This is Slime's Wealth Academy. Regular people, real wealth. No gatekeeping. See you in the next one.